I'll call the regular City Council meeting for October 27, 2014 to order. I see I have control of the room. Thank you. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ed, I see we have an amended agenda.
We do. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Two things on the agenda that we would like to discuss, I can bring up at this point, is under 9A. When we get to that item, we'll ask the council to table it because there's more information that's going to be sought from the staff that we couldn't put together in time. And then under 10, we've added B, which is under the discussion regarding city manager onboarding. And Mr. Fersman will be here to discuss that with the council.
That's it?
Yes.
Somebody want to make a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I move we approve the amended agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the amended agenda. Next item on the on the agenda is the open forum. It's an opportunity for residents to address the council on subjects not on the current agenda. Anybody wish to address the council? You're next. Not yet. Seeing none, we have a visitor presentation. Linda, you want to come up and state your name and address and talk about Victoria for a Lifetime Committee?
I am happy to do so. Thank you. My name is Linda McNulty. I live at 8834 Point Vista Drive in Victoria. Mr. Mayor and City Councilors, I thank you for the opportunity to address the Council on the activities of the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee. Our purpose here tonight is to share with you the areas this City Committee has been involved with over the past year. Before I begin, I would like to introduce the people who make our committee function. Please stand as your names are called. Our committee members are Cindy Anderson, Terry Clay, Mary Hadaway, Jim Hoffman, Henry Pryor, and Bill Kane and John Stubbsad could not be with us tonight. Thank you very much. Also with us representing the Hello Neighbor program is Sally Baston. Sally, thank you. Sally, Dave Barsness, and Cindy Anderson and myself are the current representatives of the Hello Neighbor program. And last but not least, I would like to introduce you to Katie Boone and Samantha Downs, our county liaisons from the Office of Aging. Katie, thank you so much. The Victoria for a Lifetime Committee is the former Senior Commission. During the 9 years of the Senior Commission, it became clear that older folks in town didn't mind being called seniors because they knew they were. But the baby boomers, the oldest of whom are 68 this year, resisted anything with the word senior connected to it. So to be more effective, we changed our name to reflect Victoria's City for a Lifetime status given it by the County Health Partnership several years ago. We broadened our scope, and I can tell you that what works for seniors works for everyone. Our efforts encompass all ages now. Our committee's mission is to mobilize residents, elected officials, and city staff to plan and prepare for the needs and contributions of the community's residents as they age. Our plan from the start 10 years ago was to advocate for some form of senior independent housing in our city, knowing the number of aging baby boomers would triple over the next 30 years. Other than a handful of townhomes with one-level living and some older ranch-style houses, all the building in Victoria has been large, single-family homes with multiple stories. With baby boomers beginning to retire, the nature of housing will change for most of them. There are many assisted living facilities all around Victoria. That is not what we need here. We need living accommodations such as rental apartments, cooperative apartments, or more condominiums such as Steger Lake condos across the street. We need one-level unit to downsize to, or we will lose our seniors as time goes by. We are actually already losing them. Some will stay in their larger homes, but most will not. Trending are larger homes becoming shared living areas for golden girls, but not likely for golden boys. Boys, it appears, do not share. Diversity in the type of housing needs to happen in this city. There are changes coming, and it is our committee's job to remind the city that if they want to keep their booming seniors, they need to plan for them, or they will downsize elsewhere. Please remember that the senior tsunami has already begun. It is no longer in the future. This year, our committee established the Hello Neighbor program. This is Victoria's very own volunteer welcome committee. Our purpose is to share all that is great about our city and help new residents get to know us. Our Hello Neighbor bag of valuable stuff is a gift that holds a broad spectrum of information, coupons, and certificates from city, county, organizational, and business resources. Victoria residents who deliver these bags are Victoria for a Lifetime Committee members Cindy Anderson, Sally Baston, and Dave Barsness, and myself. Our volunteers answer questions from new residents and are the friendly faces that say, "We are glad you are here." Our Trail Bench campaign is just getting started. The Victoria for a Lifetime Committee will be working with the Park and Rec Department in partnership to create more user-friendly trails in our city. This works for seniors as well as moms pushing strollers. It works for everyone. We already have 2 benches donated, the first by the Deer Run Homeowners Group for the Savannah Loop across Cochia from Holy Family High School. It is a circular 1-mile trail. For those who want to walk but need to rest, this is the first trail to be outfitted. The memorial benches will be installed along with bronze plaques commemorating the donor, be it a family, a business, or a memorial to honor a loved one. The second donation just came in, and I don't have that information yet, but our sincere gratitude goes to the donor. Our campaign will feature the city trails and locations and links. These benches will support the community as the community supports the benches. Promoting volunteerism in Victoria is important, beginning with those schools and nonprofits that operate in our city, like Victoria Elementary School, who needs adult readers in the lower grades. Awareness is key. Getting the word out is our goal. We are currently promoting Store to Door, a volunteer grocery shopping program that shops for the elderly who wish to remain in their homes but cannot get to the grocery store, either physically or because they cannot drive. This program recently expanded to Carver County and has been successfully helping the elderly in the metropolitan area for 30 years. Another volunteer program, WeCab, is now just coming to the eastern Carver County area from its origination in Mound, Westonka. This nationally acclaimed program provides safe, affordable, and flexible supplemental transportation for those in our area who are unable to drive to medical appointments, work, grocery shopping, or food shelf, church, volunteering, or social events. Former Mayor Mary Hirschberger-Toon is heading up the steering committee for WeCab in eastern Carver County, a committee on which Mayor Tom O'Connor and I are happy to serve. Victoria volunteers already signed up to help are Jim Hoffman of the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee and Roger and Carol Swanson and myself. The major sponsor of this grassroots effort is the Ridgeview Medical Center. Last year, our committee created a phone list with important numbers for anyone's use, but primarily for seniors who don't have computers. On the backside is a list of volunteer organizations that are looking for people to be involved. That list was published in the city's newsletter earlier this year and can be found on the city website. Technology usage is another area that will be explored. For those that don't have the average child's knowledge of today's devices, we will be working in partnership with the Community Education and the Carver County Library They will be prominently featured in that regard when it opens it early next year. Triad is another area that we work with the Sheriff's Department, which is a national safety program for seniors. Getting information out about frauds, scams, elder abuse, and elder financial abuse are some of the areas that will be explored in the next few months. Financial scams targeting seniors have become so prevalent that the Sheriff's Department now considers them the crime of the 21st century. Our very own town cop, Corporal Josh Baker, gave a talk to the Lions Club earlier this month. He will be available to talk with local groups on this subject. There is much to learn about these very strong problems. Victoria for Life Committee, Terry Clay and I serve on the SALT Committee, that is Seniors in Law Enforcement Together, along with representatives from the Carver County Public Health, the Sheriff's Department, and members of other Carver County senior commissions. This committee is looking for people to join our efforts. The Victoria for a Lifetime Committee is numbers 8, and we need more. The time commitment isn't huge, but seeing these programs working is totally worth the effort of participation. If you know anyone who might be interested in working with us for the community, please feel free to share our information with them. Victoria for a Lifetime Committee efforts will continue to build a welcoming community for those of any age, promote one-level living opportunities to keep senior residents in Victoria, create a diversity of living options for all, work on the transportation needs for older adults, and promote nonprofits who work for the city of residents of Victoria. Mayor O'Connor and city councilors, I'd like to thank you for listening, and our committee would like to thank all of you for the time you give our city. I'd like now to ask Katie Boone of the Carver County Office of Aging to say a few words. Thank you so much.
I'm Katie Boone. I'm a supervisor with Carver County Public Health, not a resident of Victoria. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I wanted to give you a little background on the Office of Aging in Carver County. The Office of Aging was created in 2007 by the county board. We are the only county in Minnesota that has an Office of Aging. And our focus is really to plan and help the cities plan for the baby boomers. Currently in our county, probably 28 to 29% of the population are baby boomers. As Linda said, folks born between 1946 and 1964. And they're different than today's seniors. And so we see that we have some very significant issues that we need to be addressing here in Carver County. Linda's touched on both of them. Transportation, as a county that has no regularly scheduled transit, if you don't drive, you're in trouble. And the other is housing. And as Linda said so eloquently, it's that empty nest housing as people downsize. There were a couple of handouts in your packet that I just want to run through quickly. When you look at the home value in Carver County, the median home in 2010 was $277,000. But in Victoria, the median home value was $387,000, the highest in the county. When you look at the median income in Carver County, that was $82,700. But in Victoria was $111,000. So the baby boomers in Victoria are different than they would be in Norwood or in Watertown. 92% of the households in Victoria own their own home. So when people are ready to downsize, they're going to have equity that they're going to want to reinvest. They're probably not going to be looking for rental housing. And so I really support what Linda said in terms of looking at empty nest housing in Victoria. We did some work in Watertown about 4 years ago. We did baby boomer focus groups, and what we found is that the older baby boomers in Watertown had lived there for 25 to 40 years. They all owned their own homes. They all wanted to stay. but they didn't see that there was any downsizing for them in terms of an empty nest housing in Watertown. And I think that's the same issue that a lot of the cities face, but certainly Victoria. So I would like to just say that I very much support the work that has been done here for 5 years. I actually was the staff for the Office of Aging that went every month, came out here and had a meeting with the Victoria Senior Commission, and I'm very pleased they've changed their name, which a lot of the others have in the city, to something related to aging. Would be happy to answer questions, but really want to support the work that Linda and the group have done, and to commit that we will continue to work with them. Thank you.
Comments, questions from staff, or from council? Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to see a list, like a prioritized list maybe from our commission on, what they want us to do or things for us to focus on, so that in January, February, when we go to our strategic planning, we've got a list from the committee that we can say, okay, here, let's take this into account when we're trying to figure out what we want to do for the next 2 years or 3.
Linda, you want to take a first stab at, I know what your number one priority is, but why don't you, in your perfect world, what should we be focusing on?
In a perfect world, I could hear what Mr. Pavelko said, but I didn't. So I apologize. I couldn't hear a thing you said.
He's
I
asking
have
you
my
for,
hearing aids in.
he was asking about priorities from your group. What would, if you were to establish priorities, what would be the top couple of issues you'd focus on?
The housing issue, no question.
Anything else? Jim?
I have to agree and support. My mother-in-law attempted to move to Victoria 3 years ago. She had to move to Chanhassen. There wasn't enough affordable housing for her. We have seen success over the past 4 years in growing single-family homes. We have seen success over the last 4 years in growing single-family homes. We have a position that's open, community development and planning, position that's open. And something that we've talked about over the past couple of meetings is to take that as an opportunity to emphasize other types of additions to Victoria, primarily to diversify the tax base, which brings with it the benefit of single-family homes and businesses. So we've emphasized single-family homes. We also need to emphasize now single-level living, apartments, business growth, things like that, in order to diversify the tax base. So I absolutely support this, and as we move forward in hiring that person, I would like to see someone who has extensive experience in all three.
Thank you so much, and I totally agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, for those, just for the record, I meet with this group almost monthly. This is a pretty special group of highly dedicated, very experienced, very talented people who have a singular focus, Victoria for a lifetime. Some of it has to do with seniors, and I think with the tsunami that's coming, if we don't act now, we're going to lose a lot of high-income residents and people who provide the real glue to the fabric of our community, and that would be a darn shame. So I know Linda and the group is highly motivated and is not going to let that happen, and you'll keep coming back to us periodically to assess how we're doing. Okay. Anybody else have anything on to? Thank you, Linda and Katie. Next item is the consent agenda, where all items are approved with one motion unless anybody wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda. There are, 5 items in this tonight. Anybody wish to remove anything? We'll have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the consent agenda. Next, with payment of the bills, the claims roster in the amount of $409,389.93. Someone make a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the payment of the bills. Next are the donations. We have some tonight. Somebody wish to make a,
I will make a motion that we approve Resolution 14-84, a resolution accepting donations from the following donors. A miscellaneous donation in the amount of $113 dedicated to the fire department. JNS Wigan in the amount of $1,000 to the fire department. Bruce and Barbara Stedman in the amount of $100 to the fire department. And the family of Flory Diethelm in the amount of $1,200 to the Community Trail Bench Program. So I move that we accept these donations with gratitude.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the donations. We have no public hearing tonight. Under unfinished business, at the beginning of this session, the interim city manager said we're going to table this item until November 10th.
Correct.
I move we table this item till November 10th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've moved it to November 10th. New business, Wasserman Trunk Utility Line. I assume it's Kara?
Let me just start out, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. We were notified by letter recently that the city of Victoria was to be penalized for some, what do you call it, pollution disturbance in the Wasserman Trunk area as a part of that project. And the discussion tonight is about the letter and about whether or not the city should object to the penalty or move forward to pay the fine. So, Carrie, you want to talk about that?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this specifically relates to our NPDES construction stormwater permit for this project. So any project of significance in the City of Victoria or in the state of Minnesota is subject to this permit by the MPCA. It's applied for as a joint permit between both the city and the contractor doing the work on the project. So on April 9th of 2014, the MPCA completed an inspection on the site. So they don't routinely inspect sites. In this case, they received an anonymous complaint relating to the project, and so they conducted a site investigation in response to that. During that investigation, they found a number of violations, including a small amount of sediment on the other side of the silt fence located within Lake Wasserman, and some silt fence repairs that were needed. They were looking for some additional silt fence to be installed. Included in your packet is a pretty lengthy memo that we prepared back in July detailing the issues and the city's response to those issues. That letter was provided to the MPCA and they reviewed it. And so what they determined is that even though we have become compliant with the requirements of the NPDES permit, they were still going to issue an administrative penalty order for the project. So that form was received by the city in October. That's also included in your packet. And essentially the city has 30 days to pay the penalty, or we have to exercise our right to have it reviewed as outlined in the administrative penalty order. The City of Victoria has not ever received a violation like this from the MPCA, so I myself personally don't have a lot of experience with anything like this, either for this community or any other communities. We did forward all the information to the City Attorney's Office for advice on how to respond, and certainly Melissa is here tonight and can speak to that. But I can't dispute that the violations occurred. There was sediment that got around the silt fence. If you recall, it was a very wet spring. There's a culvert that runs through that area, and there was water just gushing through the pipe all spring. So we can't dispute that the violations occurred, but certainly the contractor did respond from our perspective in a timely manner to address the issues as outlined in our letter. With that, I guess I'll turn it back to Ed for any discussion about the right to review process.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think it's a question of whether the city believes it was in the acting properly. And the MPCA has indicated that we should be paying a fine. The bottom line is how much will it cost the city to defend itself, and whether that's going to be more money than what we're trying to eliminate in the fine. So I'm going to ask Melissa to give kind of an outline of what the legal components are to the argument.
Could I just ask a question first? Are we guilty? Did we do anything wrong?
Well, first of all, I should clarify that the city didn't do anything wrong, as we're not the contractor
Yeah.
for the project.
I mean,
So
did the city do anything wrong?
the city, from my perspective, didn't do anything wrong. Our contractor performed in a way that resulted in things to be in violation of the permit. But when you have all that water washing over the silt fence, I don't know what, and I'm looking at Councilmember Pavelko, because you probably have some experience with this. I don't know what the contractor could have done differently under those conditions with what we were dealing with in the spring. So I have a hard time looking at the contractor either and saying, geez, you didn't perform your job under the contract. But, you know, they are required to comply with the permit, so.
So legally, in our contract with, in our legal agreement with the contractor, there is a legal obligation of the contractor to comply with those laws, and they have been suitably notified of those laws.
Correct. Yeah, they're required to comply with the permit.
In fact, there were two contractors.
Correct. If you recall, on this project, we had Ryan Contracting first under contract to put the sewer in, and then we had one section that we then subsequently hired Minger Construction to install. The violations occurred in the area where they were both working, so that adds a level of complexity to the issue as well.
Did the conditions, the violation conditions, persist for a period of time they were aware of and left untreated?
No, as outlined in the letter that was included in your packet, all of the contractors responded in a timely manner. They certainly took the violation letter seriously, got on site. The conditions were just very difficult to get grass to grow with how moist the area was.
Well, and as I read through this report, and it is very detailed, I'm left with the question, was it possible, given the weather conditions, to comply? And again, and this may be written in a way that puts halos over all of our heads, maybe rightfully or not, I don't know. But as I read this, it looks like everybody behaved with the best of intentions. And, you know, this is one of those act of God 100-year kind of situations that, you know, caused homes in Lake Zumbra to be sandbagged and flooded. And I understand financially the best thing to do might be just write the check and move on, but it just feels wrong to me. Again, reading the report the way I did, it feels like it wasn't humanly possible to be right or compliant. Can you comment on that?
I guess emotionally, that's the perspective that I come to it from, of I can't look at the contractor and say, you should have done this differently. I don't know what they could have done differently to change the outcome of what happened over there, given the weather conditions. But the violations that they identified on April 9th were in violation of the permit. I don't have enough experience with the MPCA process and the state statute behind all of this language to know whether that's enough. The fact that a violation existed at all in the first place is the reason for them to issue the penalty. And I just don't have enough experience.
Carrie, you don't have enough experience to deal with the legal aspects of this perhaps, but what about the actual wrong that was done? Did the city do something? Were we culpable? Are we culpable? I mean, before we decide how we're going to respond, we have to decide, are we, besides legally, are we effectively guilty, or are we?
Mayor and members, I would like to interject at this time to provide a brief overview of the legal landscape, or the statutory landscape on this, and save a discussion about fault for when we put together, if you all decide to appeal, when we put together any sort of a pleading document, any sort of a petition document, we could have a discussion about that at that time, as opposed to having a discussion about fault in an open forum.
Good advice. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So the statute talks about the penalty and how the commissioner decides about the penalty. It specifically allows the commissioner to issue an order assessing penalties up to $20,000, and it lists the criteria for determining what that penalty amount should be. There are 6 different points that the commissioner will look at. The first is the willfulness of the violation. The second is the gravity. The third is the history of past violations. 4, the number of violations. 5, the economic benefit gained by the alleged violator. And the last one is other factors as justice may require. And so in this case, the penalty was about $5,500, I believe $5,450. So it certainly wasn't at the high end, but arguably, it's not pocket change either. So it's really a discussion, a policy decision for the council, but I will say that in this particular situation, the statute, and as the order also provides, the statute allows for 2 main routes of appeal. One is a administrative appeal, and that is through an administrative hearing at the Office of Administrative Hearings. It's before an administrative law judge. It's sort of like a trial, but with a little less procedure. And so there are legal documents that need to be put together, arguments that need to be crafted. The second option is a right to appeal to district court, and that is a typical trial type setting. In both cases, we would be working with multiple parties based on the city engineer's discussion here. There are 2 contractors, CenterPoint Energy, as well as the farmer that's nearby, and then the city's role in this as well. So it's not a linear sort of discussion, and it wouldn't be a very straightforward defense. I think Kara raises some very good points about the city's role in all of this, but that isn't necessarily before the city at this point. The matter before the city is whether to appeal this particular penalty, and the city is the party that's being assessed these penalties as the regulatory party. So it's an unfortunate position that you're all in at this time. The statute does also discuss, although the order does not, the option of mediation, and it is possible prior. Or actually in addition to that review, the commissioner can enter into mediation. I don't know how likely that is or if it's even possible, but I will say that it's certainly a policy decision. One thing you may want to consider is that in the event there is a subsequent violation, if ever in the future, one of the things that the commissioner would look at in determining a subsequent penalty would be, a history of violations, and if you agree to pay this penalty, you're essentially admitting that there was a violation, and that again would be used subsequently against you in determining a subsequent penalty amount if that ever happened. The likelihood of that and the chance of that is unknown. You all have never violated in the past, but it is an additional consideration. And the last thing I wanted to add is that the commissioner, if you do decide to take the trial route, the commissioner has the burden of proof. So they would be the one that would have to prove that the city was responsible and that the penalty that was assessed was the proper amount. So the city wouldn't have the burden. The statute specifically says that the commissioner has that burden. So that's just an additional consideration. I will say, though, that given the number of parties, the preparation of the documents for either type of an appeal would in all likelihood exceed the penalty amount.
By a significant amount?
It's hard to know, but, it's just the trial prep alone or the hearing prep alone is going to get there without it. Once we, just complete the documents, we'll be there, but by the time we get to the hearings, we'll certainly be there. So, yeah, I would say probably in a significant amount.
Melissa, is the city named because it was our contract or it was our project or?
Correct, that's my understanding. The city is known as the regulatory party in this, is that correct, Kara?
Yeah, so under the NPDS permit, both the entity proposing to do the work and then the contractor performing the work both have to sign on to the permit application.
Kara, go ahead, Jim.
I'm sorry. What's the proximity of where these issues occurred to other property owners along the south side of Lake Wasserman?
This is just downstream, so it's just, I should pull up a map. It's just east of the intersection of Tellers Road and County Road 43.
Will you pull up a map?
Yes.
Let me ask it more directly. What's the proximity of this to the individual's property where the litigation is occurring regarding the easement?
It's adjacent.
While you're pulling that up, can you comment on whether contractors typically carry insurance for this kind of situation?
I do not know the answer to that.
Do you know if CenterPoint and/or the other parties were cited as well, or is it only the city that was?
It's my understanding that the contractors were both received a similar letter to the city.
Okay.
I don't know the dollar amounts.
What's the status of litigation with that property owner?
We have, we're in the process, so they filed an appeal.
I'm assuming that this action, now that it's in the hands of the MPCA, is completely independent and there's no interaction with that
Well, I guess what I'm
condemnation. Is that, I guess I just, no, that's right. I just want to verify if that's the
Correct.
case.
They're totally unrelated from a process perspective.
But if you start connecting the dots, is what I'm questioning, and the fact that there is leeway in terms of how much you can be fined, and we're on the low end of that scale.
So the area where the problems were primarily located right in this area. So here's Tellers Road, here's County Road 43, this is the Hess Farm. This area right here, there's a large diameter culvert that flows through that area.
How big?
30 or 36 inch. Yeah, it's large. It might be in the photos in the packet, but so there was a small deposit of sediment that got downstream of the silt fence, and then they felt that the silt fence wasn't maintained, so you'll start to get sediment buildup over time on the silt fence, so they wanted the contractor to come out and better maintain the silt fence and add an additional piece of silt fence, but everything kind of occurred right in this area.
So, Kara, do the road ditches feed into that culvert, or what would you say
There aren't
the
really
watershed?
defined ditches along this section. It really just kind of slopes off pretty steeply down to the wetland and lake.
So what feeds the 36-inch culvert?
There is some water coming from this side of the property. There's also another culvert that runs underneath here that flows from the farm, so it's kind of a direct discharge to the lake. This is not in city limits, so Carver County and the Carver County WMO have been working with this landowner to address issues.
Was the landowner cited?
No. They aren't subject to the permit.
So I guess I'm trying to understand, if we only have just a little bit of land in between the wetland and the road, and that's our watershed of where possible erosion could take place, and everything else, obviously water has to carry the sediment. And so if we have like 0.006 acres flowing into a 30-inch culvert,
So we disturbed this area to
Yeah.
put a pipe in the ground. And so because those soils were disturbed, they were more likely to erode. So all of that water came in the spring before vegetation was fully established, so erosion will occur obviously, before vegetation is established. Had we not disturbed that area, we wouldn't be talking about anything. We wouldn't have had silt fence up and whatnot.
Do you think in your professional judgment that, given more normal weather or even, at the high end of normal, that this was foreseeable?
I'm not a water resources engineer, so I'm a little bit hesitant to totally address that.
I guess I'm thinking in terms of more engineering is where the precautions taken sort of usual and customary and appropriate.
Yeah, I didn't have any red flags about what they were doing that I didn't have any red flags, we don't have the right measures in place or we should be doing something differently.
Of course, we had the 100-year rain, too.
Well, and what was problematic too is this water level bounced up, so it wasn't even just water coming into the site, you had the whole area was up. So the section was underwater that we were supposed to have had restored, and I don't quite know how to do that. Grow grass underwater.
What are the legal obligations of the contractors to the city in this regard?
Mayor and members, anytime a city enters into or hires a contractor to do work, there are a contract between there which requires a variety of provisions, prompt payment, insurance, indemnification, all those types of things. I would anticipate that was likely present in this case as well.
So if there is a violation, it is the obligation of the contractor to pay for that penalty, or how does that work?
Mayor and members, I obviously don't have the contracts in front of me. I would be happy to take a look at those and have a report back on that. I don't know if maybe the interim city manager has an opinion about that. I'd be happy to defer.
In a response to the MPCA, let me rephrase that. Is there an ability to respond to the MPCA whether we choose to pay the fine or not about the extenuating circumstances? Not that we're going to go down a path of additional litigation or anything like that. Is there a way to have some sort of objection noted and registered on our account, so to speak?
Mayor and members, I would certainly not discourage you from submitting a well thought out letter about the situation. You could still pay the penalty, but still submit a letter saying, this we're going to pay this, but we still don't think it's right, and explain why. I wouldn't discourage you from doing that if you felt strongly about doing so.
I mean, here's my thought on it, is that we could easily spend more time on this than the cost of the fine. And as much as it pains me to admit something and pay a fine on that, that is probably the least cost to the taxpayers. But if there is a way to strongly register our disappointment, so to speak, with the MPCA, then at least we have something on record that we can use, hopefully, on our behalf down the road. And then with respect to the legal obligations of our contractors, we're all kind of caught as a result of the reign of the act of God. Maybe we end up splitting the fine between the contractors and our city, something like that.
Carrie, you want to comment? I think, aren't the contractors fined as well?
Yeah, it's our understanding that they were fined as well, but City Attorney Vos and I had a chance to briefly discuss that we should take a look at our contracts and see if there isn't a way to procure.
There might be some remedies in the contract that we could
So how did
explore.
How do they do that? If we're the permit owner, how do they also fine?
We're basically jointly party to the permit. So both of our names are on it, we both sign it.
So is the city's portion only $5,000 and they're getting fined something else, or is it almost everybody already?
Our portion is $5,500. I think theirs is similar, but I don't know that for a fact. The MPCA didn't tell us what the other party's fines were.
So that would be important to understand.
So the $20,000 limit that I heard, is that a cumulative for the violation, or is that per party?
Mayor and members, the statute without having any sort of case law or annotations in front of me, I can simply rely on the language, and it says that the commissioner may issue orders assessing penalties up to $20,000 for violations. So I would suspect that that the commissioner likely reads that to mean each order can be up to $20,000, but that's just my guess.
On the calendar, when do we have to respond?
Mayor and members, I believe it's 30 days.
30 days.
No,
You have-
what date is that?
The letter was dated October 7th. I didn't have it came by certified mail, so I don't know if we received it on the 7th or the 8th. It was a Friday.
I believe it's 30 days from the receipt.
It'll be by middle of November.
Yeah, within 30
What information we still need on this is, from my perspective, can this be tabled until the next council session?
November 10th.
November 10th.
Mayor and members, it says within 30 days after receiving the order, one would have to request.
What's the official date of receipt?
That I don't know. I don't know
Well,
what
we're
date was
saying it's
received.
7 or 8.
Yeah, it was,
It's before
It
the
was-
10th.
yeah.
Well, here's kind of my, summary of this is, if the parties who were involved, again, citing the report, appeared to do what was prudent and customary to protect against violations, that anything that was brought to their attention they attempted to remedy, that the weather conditions were historic, and I'm not sure, this is reminding of the situation when you can't possibly follow the law, then we're all outlaws. And the MPCA representative didn't attend the on-site meeting. Everybody else seems to have been represented there, but the MPCA was not. So I'm really troubled with the idea of writing a check just to make it go away. It's just wrong.
But before we go down that path, I want to understand the ramifications of it. I mean, I agree with you, Tom, that writing a check just doesn't seem the right thing to do, but it might be the least costly and just go away.
And I think too, either way, the silt went on the wrong side of the fence. So somebody has to pay for it, because it's someone's job to make sure that we're not ruining the lake.
But if I understand correctly, this is an administrative fine that all of the violations have been cured at the expense of the city and/or contractors, whoever, right? So the fences were repaired, the sediment was removed from the lake, the lands have been re-stabilized. There is no permanent, long-term effect of this.
No, the sediment was promptly removed.
This is a punishment. It's not to remedy anything. It's just a punishment.
And one quick question. Who approves the erosion control plans for these sites?
The watershed district. So that's why if you read through the letter, we promptly notified the watershed district and requested them to come out, and we wanted a second set of technical eyes to make sure we were doing what we should be doing. I did confirm we did receive it on October 7th.
If we decide not to pay this and go down the other path, what are the immediate next steps?
Mayor and members, if you decide not to pay this, then we would commence preparation of the petition to file. You would need to decide whether or not you want to go to an administrative hearing or a district court hearing.
And what is the effort to prepare a petition and submit it? What's it cost? Broad strokes.
I would say low double digits. I don't know off the top of my head. I would say, given that there's 5 parties,
Maybe we
at least 10 or 15. I mean, to prepare,
Yeah,
maybe a little bit south of that, but to go to trial, a lot.
Maybe I should ask another question and step back from this. Has anybody called the guy at the MPCA and talked to him?
I have not, but Kara, you've had conversations.
Yeah, we've had a number of conversations with the staff person at the MPCA, who's our liaison on the project.
Is there an opportunity to talk to someone above the staff person and say, hey, what's going on here, this isn't right?
I don't know there's always an opportunity to call somebody.
From your conversations, is there a sense at the MPCA that this was somehow willful or negligent or that we were cavalier in our treatment of it or response to the problem?
Or is this just a pro forma response?
It just more feels like they're just going through their process, and we're just the person they're dealing with at that given moment on the phone.
This seems to me to be one of those very, very troubling instances that arise from time to time and impose on a quote-unquote small city, a small legal jurisdiction, where you've got an appointed bureaucracy that basically can do almost whatever they choose to do. We're in a position here, it seems to me, we're going to pay 10 or 5 figures to avoid a $5,000 fine. And as bad as it sits, I think, Jim's, your approach of at least having the cathartic benefit of putting together a strongly worded, you got to be kidding me type letter that accompanies the check. I mean, if we're did I hear you say? I mean, it's 5 figures. It's just for the administrative.
No,
hearing.
I don't think it would be that much. No, I think, I think Bob and I were thinking maybe 10 to 15,000 to get going. It's so hard to know until you dig into this, but for trial, I mean, trial is never cheap. That's why no one wants to go.
Yeah, but even the administrative, 10 to 15 to avoid 5?
It's the same.
And the likelihood of prevailing?
It's really the same thing. I mean, it's basically a trial. It's just sort of the procedural rules and evidence are a little bit lighter.
And then the other aspect of it too is we have a reputation of the city in dealing with contractors. I mean, they try it hard, from what I understand from Kara. And even though, exploring the legal obligations, without talking about guilt, who's the responsible party if they're performing the service? It sounds like legally we might have that, but that's not necessarily a good steward or a good partner, so to speak, if this is being brought against us.
Well, Mayor, members, I might add that the city engineer mentioned that she didn't dispute that the silt runoff exceeded the bounds of the permit. So perhaps the letter that you sent would be something that would address how times are changing, and maybe the rules of these permits need to change because they don't respond to the circumstances and the realities on the ground anymore. I mean, it's troubling to me that the engineer can't think of anything else that the contractors could have done to comply. I mean, that to me is just troubling and would be information I would want to put in a letter if I was going to put one together.
Ask them what should we have done.
Right, what more could have been done? And so, I mean, that to me is, again, a policy decision for you all to wrestle with here. But again, the matter before you is to decide whether or not to proceed with payment of the penalty or to appeal.
Anybody else have anything to offer? Jim, do you want?
A couple things. So,
Go ahead.
Kara, can you, in your best guess, did the silt come from the ditch where we were working and our contractors were working, or was it coming through the culvert from the farm fields down the way?
I do not know. But it
Because
could have easily been from the area we were working, but it
Okay.
was underwater. so-
Because my issue here is that if we have the watershed district designing our erosion control measures, and if they design something that wasn't adequate, or if there's a 30-inch culvert with a, huge CFS coming through there and a 100-year flood, and they said this was the right protocol and it wasn't, why are we to pay for because they didn't engineer correctly?
Well, they didn't design it, so the city hired an engineer to design the project. But the MPCA, or the Watershed District, reviews and permits our erosion control measures on projects. So they reviewed and approved what the designer provided as the proposed erosion control measures.
Joe, your point, when I was on the planning commission, this was my first year in office, it was about 4 years ago, we were reviewing the Lake Clarity, all the lakes in the city jurisdiction, and that was the most impaired body within the city limits. And it was specifically pointed out in the Planning Commission it was because of the runoff from the farm across the street.
Yeah, that to me is the real irony here, is that we've got some silt that's on the wrong side of the fence, and yet the farm is spewing whatever a farm spews directly into the lake.
And I guess my big problem here is that when you're in the city limits and you want to do a construction project, you spend thousands and thousands of dollars to prevent erosion through silt fence and you name it. And then you go on the other side of the road, which isn't in the city limits, and it's just open field, just like it is on the right or the east side of the road, only it doesn't have any erosion control. And I guess it's just hard for me to believe that that's all our fault. That you have open tile lines, open ditches, you know, just jamming water through to get it out as fast as it can into Wasserman Lake. And I just have a problem with that. And obviously it happened, so you can't dispute that, but I'm just troubled that the city and our contractors have to pay it when I don't think that the MPCA has proof that that's all ours.
I agree with you, Joe. I'm going to try a trial balloon here. I do think it's to our benefit and the contractor's benefit to have some sort of strongly stated letter of our objection to this in the time frame, as soon as possible. But we probably need to be prepared to pay the fine, because if we don't pay the fine, the ramifications, I assume, are worse. But I think it might be interesting to have whomever heads that department come and speak to us. I'd like to understand why, and have them explain it to us and the citizens of Victoria why we're guilty in this and why we have to pay the fine. And if that doesn't work, then we've already approved paying the fine.
Unfortunately, timing's not in our favor. I assume those are 30 calendar days?
Yeah, it would be due before the next session.
Before the next council.
I'd still like to have the gentleman, or lady or gentleman, sit in front of us and tell us.
And again,
this is right.
and I, sentimentally speaking, feel the same exact way. I like the idea of putting a letter out there objecting to it and seeing whether they can negotiate it down. But again, to the precedent and any future, possible violations, now we're a repeat offender.
No, I understand that, and the only reason I said we go ahead and approve paying the fine is that's the case, because we don't have any time between now and the expiration to respond back. But I'm hoping that there would be a response back by whom we send the letter. At least we have a conversation with Ed and Kara on this, and our attorney.
I think it's important that we pay the fine. I think it's a travesty, or potentially a travesty, given the facts as we understand them. But the consequences are beyond our control. If I'm hearing correctly, we could end up avoiding 5 but paying 10 to 15 just to be able to win or lose again. And in fairness, these agencies, how often do these agencies lose these kinds of discussions?
Mayor and member, I don't know that answer. I don't know the answer to that question.
My intuition tells me they don't lose very often, but, and I feel it pains me to give in to this, but was your trial balloon in the form of a motion, or was it?
Well, if everybody agrees, I will put it into a motion.
Why don't you put it into a motion?
I move we send a strongly worded letter to the director of the MPCA, request their personal response with respect to the allegations, further that they meet in front of the next city council to explain themselves to this, and at the same time we also approve payment of the penalty pending the outcome of their response. How's that?
Any other discussion or comment?
So you said pending the outcome? I don't,
If they were to come back and
Yeah.
respond before the 7th.
so when's our next meeting?
10th,
So we'd have to set up a special,
we need a special workshop or a special session.
Can we appeal for an extension?
Mayor and members, I don't see any language in the statute that discusses asking for an extension. You know, we can certainly ask for it. They could say no. I don't know how quickly they would get back to us. The statute doesn't specifically address that.
Well, that should be included in the letter. An extension of 2 weeks at a minimum.
I think we all can accept that the intent of the MPCA in protecting our waters is
Noble.
noble. Thank you, good word. And is not what we're resisting here. The resistance is to pay a penalty for work that we tried our very best to comply with. And again, it's not a remediation, it's just punishment.
Jim, to your motion, you want to add an additional item where we appeal for an extension,
Yes, please.
a 2-week extension.
I'll second.
A second. Any further discussion? Joe?
Mayor, could we understand clearly what the motion is? I'm a little confused.
So the motion is to respond back immediately with a letter to the director of NPCA.
Commissioner of PCA?
Yep. With our strong disagreement on their approach to this, a request for an explanation of why this is going forward. What could we have done differently? An extension of 2 weeks and a request that they come before council and explain themselves.
And about the payment?
And and also tentatively, we're approving payment so that we don't get caught in additional litigation for not paying on time if that's the way we have to go.
Anything
I
else?
second that.
There, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
One more question. What happens if the contractors don't pay?
Mayor and members, the penalty that was assessed by the commissioner was between the commission, or was between MPCA and the contractors, as I don't believe that the city would be subject to their own unique order, especially since we weren't provided with it.
So in the interim, and this is, I think, unrelated to the motion, but it probably goes into a decision process down the road if things follow the path that we hope they take. Could you do some investigation with the contractors to find out exactly what information they've received, what their fine is, so we can kind of put the whole picture together?
Yep.
Send that out in an email, Ed, to council.
Mayor and members, would you also like us to look into what the contract language says with the contractors?
Yeah, please.
One last fine point. What happens if we don't pay it on time? We're delinquent. We wait till our next council meeting and then make a decision based on the information we're gathering.
The statute provides for the accumulation of interest, I believe.
At what rate?
So 3% or 6% for 3 days.
That might,
It's about $30.
that might be,
But that's more important. What's more, it's the,
Interest.
you're late is more important than what the interest would be, it seems to me.
I would have to look up the statute. It's a statutory citation to 549.09.
so
The headline would be, we didn't comply, we're not in compliance.
It's probably based on...
I'd like to know why their guy didn't show up to the on-site meeting to...
that should be part of the letter too.
Well, we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ed, you have feel comfortable, you have the essential points?
Yes.
Next item is the added item on the agenda, the city manager onboarding.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council,
Richard Fersman is here, I see.
yeah, just going to introduce him. Richard Fersman, Bermeyer Fersman Group, here to discuss with the council a city manager onboarding for the incoming city manager, Lori Hokanen.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I just thought I would do a brief overview, just a minute or so, and then answer any questions that you have. You do have material that I was able to forward to the Council. So you saw an example that it's an actual example. The names and cities have been changed, as you can imagine. But what we're trying to do when you're doing an onboarding is introduce your new city manager to the council and to staff to understand better the immediate tasks that are at hand, understand the culture of the organization, and to establish norms for the city manager as they start their job. The process would be to do an online survey to begin with. You see a report in front of you of what one of those looks like. We'll ask a series of questions about council expectations, about team expectations. I also have staff take a similar type of survey, as you can see. The answers are shared with the group. And we discuss questions of decorum, questions of how aggressively to pursue items, whether or not you want the city manager to make recommendations as they sit at the dais, how you want them to handle any potential conflict with the elected officials. So these are all things that we cover amongst others. The reason I developed an onboarding program is that research shows that at minimum it takes at least 6 months for a hire of this magnitude to get comfortable in their position to the point where they're contributing and they've made up the ground where they're actually earning their pay. In industry standards, private businesses, for a larger firm, it takes up to 18 months before the break-even point where the CEO is actually earning the salary that they're making. And this is because it takes time, an incredible amount of time, to learn the things that you need to in order to take risks, in order to take charge. This is intended to reduce that time significantly so they know the lay of the land. And so that is basically it in a nutshell.
How many times have you used this survey for this process?
The process, probably about 25 times. I've also done it extensively for department heads as well. The fire chief, when the fire chief came on in St. Louis Park, did it for that fire chief, and then they thought it was extremely valuable, so when they brought in their deputy fire chief, which was a new position, they asked that I do it for that individual as well, even though I wasn't part of the search. So again, it's designed to amp up their entrance, so when they come, they're hitting the ground more quickly, hitting the ground running as opposed to standing still and observing.
Richard, for the record, for transparency's sake, could you state your profession and the number of years you've been working in that profession?
Well, city manager profession, I was working for 17 years in this as a consultant to the hiring. It's been since 2007.
Given your experience, you're recommending that we pursue, or you're presenting this as an option for us to pursue. It's vitally important that we onboard our new city manager successfully. What are the other options, or are there other options in addition to this that you think we should consider?
Well, you know, I could provide a survey and just let you take it, and then you can compare the answers and sit down with Lori and discuss them without me. That would be a very cheap alternative, not one I recommend.
No,
the reason
I'm sorry. I'm looking at this as one option. And let's say we go forward with that. Are there other things that we should be doing? What can we do to make this most successful?
Well, and the things that I outlined during our discussion, when we sit down and have that, a lot of that is going to be driven by the answers that you provide. So my research has shown that the number one indicator of success for city managers is that they are, pardon my use of this word, but ordained by the council to take over the position and to run it. So if I've seen circumstances where councils, some people don't fully embrace the selection. You have, as a group, have enthusiastically embraced Lori as a city manager. So that is one of the critical steps that you've taken already. You've already taken the steps of introducing her to the community, another vital component of our onboarding. What we're going to do is set down expectations now. The other thing that you can do as a favor to your city manager is to say, let's have a strategic planning session. Let's sit down and identify goals for the next year, for the next 2 years, all the way up to 5 years. Lay that out on a plan. Lay down the expectations. What do the goals, what does success look like? How are we going to measure your participation in that? And so anytime a person starts a city manager position, if you can hand them the game plan, or in this case, invite them in to construct the game plan with you, identify the behaviors that will make that individual most successful, or the outcomes that will make that person most successful, you're way ahead of the game. A lot of cities don't do that. A lot of organizations don't do that, whether it be nonprofit or business. Only about 20% of organizations are doing that successfully.
So I kind of think of the ultimate measure of success is I guess the longer term. How well did the people perform in those positions? They were selected, they were onboarded, set up for success. So of the 25 or so times that you've used this, can you comment at a high level, kind of how those appointments have turned out over time?
All those appointments are still in place. And here's the other side of it that I think is just as important. It prepares you. It's one thing to prepare Lori when she comes in. It's the other side of that is you're getting another level of preparation as to what the expectations. So we're going to ask Lori, what are your expectations of Tom and of Jim and the rest of the council? You know, how is that going to look? What does the partnership look like? So now you're even establishing for yourselves, what happens if one council member is dominating Lori's time? What are we going to do with that? How do we expect to police ourselves in these situations so we're giving her and the rest of staff the best opportunities to succeed? And that's why that's done. So it's a help to you and to her. Just like any other boards that I've worked with. They've come to realize, you know what? This is the first discussion we've had in depth about what a governance model looks like, where we've had just kind of an open discussion of how we're making decisions.
You know, we've all had on this group a fairly extensive business background, and it's easy to see the number of times where expectations were not aligned and how subversive that is to an organization succeeding. You walk into an arrangement and, oh yeah, we understand Lori is an all-star, we're going to go find, and we know, quote unquote, how we feel and how we act. And then, gosh, issues come up and we find out potentially the expectations were different. And anything we can do to minimize that difference, I think, is a huge plus, a huge step forward. I support wholeheartedly the onboarding process. And by the way, Lori does as well. I've talked to her.
Question, is this the actual survey here, or is this just a sample?
There's going to be one that looks like it. I've modified some questions. They're going to be modified to deep dive into Victoria. Obviously, What I tried to put together is one that reflects the goals and objectives that you set forward in your profile.
The reason I ask is that there is, in fact, the very first question, and it talks about hiring department heads and the amount of influence. And the question is very clearly one that has I think it's a Plan A city administrator role. We have a city manager, and it is their direct responsibility in that circumstance to hire their department heads.
And that's where a question would be modified.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I would turn that question around and say to the city manager, how much influence would you be comfortable with the council in hiring decisions?
And that was really what I want to understand, is if
and
this
that-
is just a template or if this is the specific questions and that they be tailored to our...
Yes, well, thank you, Tom. Yes, they'd be tailored to you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Costs?
The cost,
Cost is $950.
the time frame that involved,
Well, I would be looking at the first week that she starts.
November
You'd be
10th.
receiving, the week of November 10th. I would send out a survey, like similar to what you see there, the results are. You would fill that out. I'll develop a report and talking points, and then I will take time to sit down with you, the 5 of you, with Lori, and go over the results and talk about the position. I'll do the same with staff as well.
other questions?
I'll make a motion.
Please do.
I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation to extend let's see. There isn't a recommendation here. I'll make a motion that we extend a contract to Burmeyer Fersman Executive Search for an onboarding process for our city manager.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We'll have the onboarding process, Richard.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you on that, and as you know, we're also right on the cusp of the Community Development Director as well. So,
And that's another discussion.
yes. Thank you.
And there's yet one more discussion we need to have, and that's the transition from Lori to the current interim city manager.
Did you want me for that, Tom?
We don't need you for,
All right.
you're welcome to stay, but you have a long ride home. We need to have that discussion as to the transition from Lori, or from Ed to Lori. And I'd start that discussion by publicly thanking Ed. We would have been in deep trouble if Ed hadn't been available. He's been on board now 5 months?
It's what, 4?
4 months. Yeah, it would be, the contract we signed was up to 6 months, which would be the end of the year, right? I probably more than, because I'm around more, have seen him day-to-day dealing with the phone calls that come in, or the more complicated TIF-related questions. He's been an absolute pro. And again, I repeat, we would be in deep trouble had he not been available and willing to step into the issues of Victoria. So it's important to me, and I'm sure it is to all of us, that he be treated fairly and respectfully. And that has to do with the amount of time that he is involved with Lori, I think, in the transition. I know that Lori and you and Lori have been meeting often. Right? Weekly. And Lord knows we have work to do with 2 office buildings coming up. I guess I'd ask the council for recommendations. I mean, I could see a situation where Ed would be around for a period of at least several weeks, just to manage the normal day-to-day transition issues, and maybe even a little longer to act in a project management role of some as yet undefined respect, recognizing that Lori doesn't need hand-holding. This is not about hand-holding for Lori. This is about managing effectively a transition, at least in my mind. I'd invite others to...
Well, I think it's important, absolutely important for the transition, and I think it's unfortunate for this discussion. The one person we need here is Lori to help us understand what help she needs. But if she was to say that it would be helpful for her to have Ed remain for the remainder of the contract, I would be willing to support that. But I really think we need Lori's input on that.
I would agree with that. In fact, that's exactly what I was thinking, is that I'd like to get the input of, beyond that, maybe the entire staff to see how, what critical stage any particular projects may be at, and just sort of what balls are in the air that could drop if we don't manage this and provide a little bit longer transition period. So I guess if it was, my thought would be to maybe have this conversation at the November 10th meeting with Lori in presence, and in the interim, maybe gather up the input from the department heads as far as what are the risk areas if we don't.
I mean, in order for Ed to be able to have some ability to plan his life, are we comfortable that at least through the end of November?
Yes, absolutely.
Set that expectation?
Yeah, absolutely.
At least through the end of November, at least, and then we'd have a further discussion with Lori present at the November 10th City Council session.
I think that's what we're talking about, is the month of December.
Okay. Well, let me make...
I guess we should ask Ed, is that acceptable to you?
Well, the contract called for up to 6 months, and I understand that it may not reach that point, but yes, I think we can work something out. I think Lori's a good choice. She'll do a great job. She needs some assistance in transitioning. We've talked about it. I think she'd be open to having me here, but as the mayor said, not to handhold, and that would not be my intent.
Well, if everybody's comfortable, I don't think we need a motion. We'll just
Table it.
table it till the November 10th session. Reports of the city manager.
Just that one thing, the library, Carver County Library System is attempting to put together a grand opening event for the new library, which is part of the City Hall, obviously. And they've gone to significant avenues in which to put on what I would call a very first-class performance. And so that they're looking at trying to hold a grand opening for the library in early April. That's assuming that the project moves along as it's planned at the current time. I think it's important that we as the city of Victoria share in that grand opening event because it's obviously a building where, with the amount of people that they think will attend it, we'll need to have space. And I think to show off the City Hall as well as the library is important, and we can do it all at one time. So I attended a meeting on Friday which went quite long in terms of talking about this, but I think they have a well-meaning intent of putting on a very nice grand opening. So I just wanted to make you aware that that's in the works. More information will be coming forward on that.
Ed, do you know the approximate date?
We have not set a date only because we don't know the exact date of construction completion on the facility. So tentatively, well, we were looking at April only because of the weather,
Yep.
as well as them having their soft opening, which will probably be in February. So,
Well, and the reason I was asking in April kind of piques my interest in that we've got the Lions Club, we've got the VBA all doing Easter events. If it was around the Easter event, there's an opportunity to make it really big and maybe have it down around that area. Something to think about.
yeah, probably would be on a weekend too.
Yeah.
Like a
So,
Saturday.
I mean, like if you were to do it around in conjunction with events that they're planning,
Yeah.
that might be a way to Expand the audience.
Related to that, Kara, you want to give us a quick update on the construction progress?
Sure. If you recall, we talked about the status of the schedule for City Hall and made note of the fact that the project is trending behind schedule. A key component that we were waiting for was a critical steel delivery. That steel did get delivered, so that is a really important milestone in allowing us to move forward and firm up a schedule. So I didn't have anything for tonight's meeting of a specific new date for what our target move-in schedule is, but that was a big hurdle to get past, so I expect that on the 10th I will have a new move-in date to share with the City Council, and if I get it ahead of time, certainly I'm sure the City Manager will forward it out to the City Council. I should note that Public Works is ahead of schedule, and they paved the parking lot. Do you want to comment?
Certainly. Mayor and City Council, the driveway and parking areas were paved last week. Actually, the seeding, final grading and seeding was started today. So we're looking at that mid-November to end of November timeframe to be pretty well complete out there. So we're right on track.
What landscaping, Ann, do you plan on doing before the end of the year, before winter sets in?
We are going to be seeding, hydro-mulching, blanketing, pretty much the site that's been disturbed, and/or just grass seed. We do have more trees that have to be moved yet around the site, so we'll be finishing that up fairly soon.
Using all the trees?
A majority of them, yes.
And those that we don't use, what are we doing with them?
They will stay on site.
There was some discussion at our last meeting about the size of some of the trees, so in terms of getting too big to move without a spade. So is it fair to presume that those will be moved first so they don't outgrow their ability to be moved?
A lot of those have been moved upwards. There's quite a bit of tree inventory towards the back that has been yet to be disturbed. So we're actually moving out the pines. Some of the larger trees have already moved out to the front too, but they will be continuing to move as they can.
And as part of the council recommendations, when we repositioned the building, there was some discussion about offering the neighbors with direct line of sight to the building some additional screening in terms of trees on their property. Has that offer been made, and what is the outcome of that?
Yes, the offer has been made. I met with all the property owners, and we moved roughly about 15 to 16 trees across the street at 4 different properties. Some took 1 tree, some took 7 to 8. So it was just kind of where the screening was that best suited for them. So all of them were pine trees, and to my knowledge, that has been completed.
So all of the neighbors participated in that program?
Correct.
When do you actually expect to relocate your operation from Plan B to the new location?
We would be shooting for the end of November, around Thanksgiving time.
When's the ribbon cutting?
That we don't know yet.
Once the move is complete, will substantially all of the equipment then have an indoor home? And I'm thinking about a lot of the equipment that's outdoors at the existing site.
Yes, between the 2 sites, we should have everything indoors. Seasonal equipment will go back. We'll stay at the existing Public Works building for cold storage, and then the new the seasonal equipment that we need at the time will move out to the new Public Works facility.
That'll be a huge upgrade to that property. It's not the prettiest piece of real estate in the city today. What about the temporary trailer that's in the parking lot at the existing building?
That will be removed as well. As soon as we're out of there, we'll get that scheduled for pickup.
Eliminate that expense?
And effectively, the operation moves to the new facility?
Correct.
Middle of November?
Correct. End of
November?
Yep.
Great.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other reports, Ed?
I have nothing else unless you have questions.
Council members?
Just a brief readout from the Park and Rec Committee meeting from this past 1 week ago tonight with respect to the bandstand. So there were a couple of milestones that were reached in this project. For anybody who's been following this, originally there was hope that it would be completed. This is a project that is funded entirely by a private citizen group donating their funds and the designs for the project to provide a city resource or a community resource for a bandstand between the plaza next to the social and Steger Lake. In the course of the project, they encountered some bad soils, and so there was some significant redesign that was required. And so the original schedule of having it done this, I think by Volksfest this year was the hope, obviously wasn't able to be realized. But in September, the Technical Environmental Panel between Three Rivers District and the Watershed District, the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, agreed on what the wetland delineations are, which allowed them to then define the site completely. And they're working on final grading and landscaping plans. Final cost estimates are being prepared, and at this point, the expectation is that construction will begin in the spring of 2015. So it doesn't require anything of us at this point, but I think this is an exciting project and one that there's been a lot of community interest in, so I thought I would just give a brief update.
And no city funds?
No. It's funded by the private group. And I don't know what public announcement about that or identification, but it is a private group.
Anything else?
Just to raise a question, so the plaza area next to the Lakeside building, what are the plans for that completion?
Mayor, City Council members, we will be going into site plan design work over the winter with hopes of that project moving forward in the spring as well.
There was a suggestion that was brought up 3 or 4 weeks ago that as we consider the planning, this was a warm fall day and there were over 100 bicycles parked in the plaza area with everybody visiting downtown. The suggestion was be kind to our bicycling friends and put in lots of bicycle stands. Thank you.
Duly noted.
Yeah, talk about hundreds of bicycles. Anybody who was downtown on this past Saturday for the Halloween event, I mean, I continue to be amazed at the reaction that our downtown is getting. I mean, Randy and the VBA, congratulations, you pulled off another huge event. I want to see what you do when it's January and February and get that same kind of crowd downtown. But do you have a feel for how many people were there?
I had Sue for the paper, so it was 500 plus.
500 plus. Just, of course, you had the benefit of a beautiful day too, which certainly helps. But boy, there were people milling about, sitting down, walking around. It was just, it was a sight to see.
I had the opportunity to speak to a few of the people there, and almost none of them were from Victoria, of the ones I spoke to. They were all coming here as a destination because of all the great progress, and we're very excited about. And the comment was, every time I get here, it's nicer and it's better and it's growing, and we're really, great job to the VBA for developing that community spirit and those events.
Well, thank you for that. The Halloween is a collaboration with the Victoria Lions too for that particular event.
So many thanks to the Lions too.
Shame on me for forgetting the Lions. Yeah, they were running the games and active participation was noted. All right, anything else? Take a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.